90 or 91. I think it's 90s. So yeah, 1990, 1 year after June 4th, 1989. So in 1990, the students at the time were protesting against the KMT government at the time, and so that sort of started some kind of a curse. If you are starting a student movement, it has to be some kind of a plan. It's true. Many have tried to make another student movement, and most of the time they call themselves some kind of a plant or flower or whatever. So for example, in 2008, I took part in another movement called the Wild Strawberry Movement. And that was also an attempt to sort of get public support, because the wild lilies were so pure and so idealistic, and so are we, you know, that kind of thing. And of course, we all had our different reasons. For example, the wild strawberries was another can of worms. Well, I'm not gonna get into it, but yes, that thing, wild strawberries actually started the sort of countdown to the sunflowers. So the sunflower movement took place in 2014, March 2014. So it's 6 years after the wild strawberries, November 2008. After March 2008, President Ma Ying-jeou was elected. He swore into office in May. So President Ma, after he took office, he started a series of policies that sort of engages Taiwan into China closer. First economic, then political. So that upset many, including myself. So we sort of wanted to tell the President Ma or Ma administration at the time that we didn't agree to the depth and the pace of the Taiwan-China engagement. And so also the Ma administration at the time was also very much pro-development, pro-business. So a lot of environmental issues and human rights issues, and also energy, the nuclear power policy, were all in the process of speeding up. So if you were an activist, either a student or someone who just fresh out of college or graduate schools, those are the things that you've got a lot of things going on in the streets. There's a lot of things that you can protest to. So I think this culture of activism was growing. I wouldn't even say that we really knew what we were talking about. I wouldn't go as far as saying that, yes, I'm an expert in energy policy. No, I'm not, far from it. But it was this growing culture of activism, and also this growing network of people. So if you were in a sort of Pride March in Taipei, you probably also be taking part in, say, anti-nuke or anti-China engagement, anti-ECFA, all that. You will be taking. There's a lot of places you can go to. A lot of and along with the growing culture, this also we have this Cafe Philo and all these wonderful hipster places that we can hang out and just get to know each other. So, and mostly getting the trust of camaraderie. I think that's very important for the sunflowers to flourish. So, back in 2008, when we did my first sort of big protest in the wild strawberries, we were really inexperienced. We didn't know we didn't know better. And so we thought, well, learning from the experience of past student movements and whatnot, we didn't really like what they did in the 90s. Back in the 90s, there was also, I think back in the 90s, they also had an example to learn from, which is Tiananmen Square. It was obvious. As much as they didn't like to admit it, it just happened like a year ago for them. So the Wild Lilies had almost a template of how you put the story together. You would have several leaders, student leaders. Among them, there has to be a female leader, also several leaders from different schools. Just like the Tiananmen Squares, the students at the Wild Lilies would have signs telling people which schools they're from. This is from Suzhou University, this is from National Taiwan University, that's from Normal University, all that. And different universities, even colleges would vote for the representative to have like a committee and meeting. And it was more than just students. Of course, it was the 90s. It was the sort of the peak of all things anti-KMT. So everyone of all classes were there. But now we sort of, they sort of frame it as a student movement, so that they are more impartial, it's not partisan, it's all for democracy. Sure, it is, but I think it's also some kind of a Confucian influence in the background, where you would have the gentry, telling the emperor what to do according to his conscience, that kind of thing. But in any case, so that was the Wild Lilies. So in 2008, when we had the wild strawberries, we wanted to do everything differently. So we didn't want to have student leadership, or we didn't want to have like a committee of leaders to be speaking for the movement, on behalf of the movement. We didn't want to create a star. We didn't want to create any celebrity at all. I think, and we didn't want to have an organized protest. So every night we had a discussion over what we should do. Should we stay here or should we go? And that was excruciating, because if you want to do everything by the book to the fullest extent of democracy, it's not going to work. Because every night there is a different group of people. Or so there is no check and balance, there is no responsibility for whatever you vote for tonight, because tomorrow night it might be someone else voting, right? So it was a failure as far as a sort of organized protest was concerned. But that also bounces to the other extreme. After 2008, we thought, well, if not having a leader, not having celebrities, not having an organization is a recipe for disaster, we'll do everything back in like they did in the 90s. We would have celebrities. We will have a few people representing the movement, and which are the people you see over there, Fei-fan and Wei-ting. Those are those two are the faces of the sunflowers as the media portrays it. And it was consciously done. Like we wanted it to happen. But of course, little did we know, that also turned into another disaster. If we didn't get to check their criminal records. So in any case, that's sort of the way or the method we organize ourselves and the cultures of the different times. And so things since 2008 to 14, within the 6 years, there is a lot of protests going on, and we were just accumulating the crowds. We were accumulating our energy. So sunflower didn't happen overnight. It happened overnight, of course, on the 9th, 17th of March. But it happened through a series of collective effort by all, of people of all ideology, not people of all ideology, certain ideologies. I think 2008, we also, like since then, since the wild strawberries, we have also insisted on a single, or it's quite broad, but it's more or less an ideology that we could, or some kind of a way of thinking that we could agree on. That is, we want independence. We want Taiwan first. And we also cherish the progressive values. So human rights is important. Environment is important. Gay rights, LGBT rights is important. But also, Taiwan has to be. Taiwan is also important. So it's that kind of, because before that, the progressive crowds and the nationalistic crowds were not always overlapping. Not always, of course there's an overlap. Hence, that's where we were, right? We were the overlapping, we were in the middle, but then we try to merge the two into a more sort of cohesive discourse for the whole duration of these 6 years of movement. So that's sort of, so when the sunflowers happened, it happened without being scared of saying that we want independence. Because back in 2008 we did. We didn't just say that out front. And so that's that. So that's sort of how sunflowers was the whole discourse of the sunflower was formulated. I remember on the 17th of March, I went there just like any other protest. I thought, well, there's a protest tonight at the legislative yuan, and I happen to have free time tonight, so I'm just gonna take a bus and just go there. Make sure I tie my shoe laces, and so that I don't trip later on. And I didn't know anything prior to that. I just went there because I know everybody. I know Wei-ting, I know Fei-fan, I know everybody. I know all the people that were calling for a sitting tonight, And I sort of know that something else is going on, because the way we talk about it, the way people talk about it, was more militant than before. But we just didn't. I had a hunch something was going on. It's going to happen, and then it did, right? So we storm in. Just like always, we got several, like 200-300 people storming into this assembly house. So we thought, well, that's about that. Maybe in 2 hours we'll be evacuated, and that will be we'll call it a night, right? But it didn't happen that way. And that was very frustrating because, first of all, in the chamber house, we occupied the chamber, but we didn't occupy the bathroom. And it was okay for the guys, but for the girls, it wasn't, it wasn't that convenient. Thanks to the technology of cell phone, of smartphones, that the phone booth no longer work on two sides of the assembly chamber at the chamber house. So we sort of made an emergency washroom for the ladies with buckets and whatnot. I don't know how they do it, but they did it. So that. And because we sort of stopped the police from coming in, it was natural. You have to. If the police are storming, you have to stop them. But we just didn't know that they could be stopped, right? And I remember like about the next day or like the day after, when I went out for